Hi guys, and welcome back to the next lesson in our NUKE Practice Hour. My name is Helge Maus from pixeltrain. I know that our last lesson was a little bit technical, and also this here is a really fundamental concept which I want to talk with you about. And so keep in mind that some of these fundamentals are really important if you later want to work efficiently inside of NUKE. This time we want to talk about premultiplication and what that word means in practice. So for this we start with a really simple setup which you know by now. So I press the R key over my viewport to read something in, and from my trainings data, which you can get on Gumroad or on my Patreon, I read in here my product render. I click here open and you see how it looks. First things first, in my case I have a 4K plate here. I've packed in my trainings data a smaller version of that here because it's too big to ship around with a free Gumroad. So what we do now here is I bring the resolution down here, and as you remember, we normally want to set our project settings first, so I press the S key here over my node graph. And then I go here into the full size format and I switch here now the whole setup to full HD, so it's a little bit faster and we can then work more efficient. So to get now this plate here into this format, we need a node for that, and we use a Reformat node. You find the Reformat node here under the transforms. So if you go here and look around, you find here the Reformat. I hook it up here. And now you see the standard default settings of the Reformat node says that the output format here is the root format, which is HD, and the transformation we do is to format. So everything is fine. Now we have an HD plate here. Let's take now a constant node here for a background, and to now switch the color here, I hook up first my viewer with the 1 key here by selecting here the constant node, and then I hold down my control key and click here on this color wheel to open my color chooser. And I've activated here my color field, so let's take a nice color. Let's do something bluish here. And if you want to have it a little bit saturation here and the value a little bit darker, you can do it here directly with, for example, HSV. Okay, that's nice. The next thing we want to do is we want now to connect these two streams. We want to make a comp. For this, we use the Merge Node, and you can hook it up by yourself, but there's a really fast way. Select first the Reformat node here, then hold down your Shift key and add to your selection the constant node. And if you then press M, you see NUKE hooks this here up automatically. So you have on the A stream the foreground stream. You have here now our product, and here on the B stream, the background is now our constant node. And you see everything works like expected. We now look into the merge node. You see that the standard operation here is over. And if you read a little bit about these modes here, you can hover with your mouse over this dropdown. You see that over uses A plus B, and then in brackets you see 1 minus alpha. And the alpha is a little a here because it means the alpha from the A stream. So if you see here the capital letters A and B, it means which input, RGB data, is it taking from the A or the B. And if you have the small letters A and B, it's meant the alpha from the A stream or the alpha from the B stream. So that's the way this here is read. And you see here, it takes, if you take an over the complete A stream, I have to go over that here again, and then it plus it onto the B stream. And for the alpha, it takes 1 minus the alpha of the A stream. So that's the mathematical background how this here works. And to work like that here, this merge node expects that the A input here is a pre-multiplied image. What is a pre-multiplied image? You see, it works. So somehow this image here is a pre-multiplied image. It means that the color data of this plate here was multiplied by its own alpha channel. And if I press the A key here, you see that's the alpha channel here, and you know from the alpha now that 1 means something is opaque, so here you see the glass or the toothbrushes, and black, which is 0, means that's the background which we want to stencil out. And through this information, you see that the merge now can work correctly. Now comes the point why is this named a premultiplication and why do you as an artist have to know about that? Because really often while you're comping, you have to premult something or unpremult something. For example, there's a rule inside of NUKE that you can't work in color correction with pre-multiplied images. So you will introduce artifacts, edge artifacts, if you work with pre-multiplied images. So you always have to unpremult them first, make your color correction and bring them back. And sometimes that's a little bit tricky. So in this lesson, we want to talk about what this pre-multiplication is and how a merge node here works. And if you now see all these mathematical explanations here, you see everything comes down to math. And most of the operations are really plus, minus, multiply, and divide. So this is really math, and so that's the approach we do here now. Bear with me, I will explain it to you. Let's make our first comp by hand. For this, we need something which we want to comp. I use for that a constant. And we set this constant again here to orange this time. So this will be my foreground. So I press the N key while I'm over this node and type in FG, like foreground. And this foreground is nice, but we want to have a soft ball of orange. So we have somehow generated an alpha channel. If you render this out, you maybe have an alpha channel like in this image here, or you do it by yourself. And to get a ball here, what we can do is we go here into the draw nodes, and if we look around, we see here a radial node. And what a radial node does, hook it up, you see you get here a radial gradient. And if you look into the node itself, you see you have here an area where you can define which area you want to have that, and you can also change now these values here. You see you change these values with the help of this widget here, but I think that's absolutely okay here. If we want to change the softness, we can go here, but I like a little bit of softness so that you see what happens if you have half transparent areas here. Okay, and this radial node in here is now a representation of our alpha. So press the N key here and type this is our alpha. And to see a little postage stamp, a little image here, what you can do is you can select a node, and every node has this node tab here. So if you go now into this node tab, you can write something into the label. So that's for documentation purposes. And here is a tick for the postage stamp. And if you tick that, you get this little image. Same thing happens if you select a node and press Alt or Option P, like a postage stamp, then you get this postage stamp image. It's a nice idea to understand a little bit better what's going on, which result you have on a node, but keep in mind that these postage stamps have to be generated, and if you have a complex tree with many postage stamps, it takes time to do that. Okay, this is our setup. So we have a foreground and we have an alpha for this foreground. And what we now want to do is we want that this area here is stenciled out by this alpha. And if we think into the idea how an alpha here looks, you see we have black and we have white. White is 1 and black is 0. And if you think in math terms, if you want to stencil out the orange plane with this alpha, you have to multiply these two. And you can do that really easily with a multiply node. And if you go here now to these layer symbols, which are the merges, you remember that we have here the standard merge node, which we always use with the M key. But if you go here into the merges, you see we have more specific merges. This here is standard merge, but you will see that the pre-selection of the mode is done for you. So let's take here a multiply. And you see, if you open this up by double click, you see this is a standard merge and only the operation is now multiply here. It's really convenient to use this multiply node here. And now we want to do that. You know that now the order of the two elements of a multiply is not important, so hook this up here and you see this is the result of multiplying something with an alpha. Everything which was black here on this plate here is removed, because if you have a value, multiply it by 0, it's 0. And if you multiply now here the orange by the white pixel, which is at this point here, white means 1. So if you multiply something with 1, it stays like it is. And everything in between, you get a soft interpretation of this. Great. So this was our first step. Now we want to place that. I make a copy of our constant node here, over a background like this here. So name it background. To do that now, we can try now our friend the merge node. I make a merge node here, I hook it up, we need B here at this point and not A, so let's take the B stream here, the background, and bring that here in. And if you take now a look here, you see this looks wrong, absolutely wrong. The reason for this is that we have still background here. The classic way of adding two streams together is also not over. It is plus. So it's really like in math. Let's take plus. You will see that there's no big difference here. But believe me, if you want to bring two streams together, you need a plus here. And if you look into the explanation here of the over, you see A plus B. So that's exactly what we want. But we still have a problem here. And the problem is, behind the over statement, you see in brackets 1 minus A, which means the alpha from the A stream. And this is something we haven't done yet. And if you now think about what we want to do here, I take this here again. We want to place this here over this background here, which means if you bring this over, you have here overlapping colors. And that's the problem why this looks so strange here, because you added on each other. And if you now go with your mouse here over that and you read here the values, you see we have values over 1. So this step here, the premultiplication, that's the topic here, is done, and that's correct. But what we now also need is we have to stencil out from this bluish area here, the area where you later want to have your A input placed. And for this, we need this alpha here again. So let's make a connection here. I make a dot node here to demonstrate that. You can have a dot node in several ways. You can press the command key here on your keyboard, and then you have these yellow dots. And if you take one of these yellow dots and move it, you see you get a dot node here. That's one way of working. Other way of working would be you place somewhere your mouse cursor, click, and then you press the dot on your keyboard, and then you get a dot node. And that's the way I get now my alpha. I connect this here over, and yeah, let's make something like that. It's not the best style, but it's explanation only. So we deliver the alpha here, and what we now have to do is we have to stencil out the area here. We can try again multiply. So let's take a multiply node. Yeah, and if you type multiply, you see we have two of them, multiply in the merges and multiply in the math. We use multiply in the merges, and we get a merge node with multiply here. So make a double click to open it, multiply. And what we now want to do is we take our background here, bring it a little bit up, and try now to multiply this here with the alpha. And you will see that you don't get what you want, because now we have the same result like here. Yeah, you get the area which you normally want to have neutral, so black with a bluish tint, and outside of that it's black. So what we need is the opposite. We have to invert this alpha for that to make room for the orange one. And to invert something, there's a node which does it. It's named invert. So let's take an invert node here, place it here. We can now get rid of this node here. And now you see, now we have a hole in our background plate. So we have the hole here, and if we go here to the plus, you will see now it looks correct. Congratulations. This here is the job which normally a simple merge node like this does. I hope you understand the idea that you stencil out with the alpha in the foreground, the surrounding, and for the background, the area where you want to place the foreground. And this part here, so this part here is the pre-multiply. And all NUKE merge nodes expect from you as an artist that your A input is pre-multiplied, that you have done it. Now you also see how it is done here. But the nice thing inside of NUKE is that there's a node for that. So if we want to pre-multiply something, we can use the Premult node. And if we now read the Premult node here, let's do that. You see, you multiply the RGB data, which was that here, RGB, the orange one, by the alpha channel, which we brought here into that here. So if it's in one image, you can use this node here directly. And yeah, that's the whole idea behind that. Let's now talk about what premultiplication brings you. If you go now back to this image here, you see this CG render here had an alpha. The premultiplication was done. And that's the normal way renderings should be for visual effects. We expect that the CG department delivers objects premultiplied on a black background. And then we directly can use them in the merges. If you don't get that, you have to do it by hand. And we do it with a Premult node. And the Premult node is also used a lot if you have something which you want to use as an alpha and you want then to stencil out something with that. An explanation we had in one of the last lessons where I used the copy node and I took the copy node and used a text as an alpha and then I premulted it over. So that's the use of the Premult node. But sometimes you have to make the opposite. And this is something we want to test now with this plate here. Let's copy this plate here. We take a closer look here. Let's take this bristles here. Okay. Like I've said, this here is pre-multed. And many newbies don't really know, is this now pre-multed or not? Let's take a look here. If I now unpremult this with the Unpremult node, you will see that's absolutely the opposite. This time we divide the RGB data by the alpha. Let's do that. You will see that this here is the typical look of an unpremulted image. You see these steppings here at these edges and also here. So the whole anti-aliasing is now gone. This is a typical indicator for an image which has a straight alpha. That's the term for that. This is a straight alpha, and the other one, the soft idea, is the premultiplied one. And we can test the premult here at the end. Again, you see if we premult that, everything is fine now. And like I've said, if we want to make color corrections later, we always have to use an unpremult before. Let's test this at the end. So I take a color correct node, so C key for a color correct here. And first we want to make the correct way. So we unpremult our image first, then we make a color correction. Let's try something. I go here into the midtones and change the gamma, for example, here a little bit up, and I bring down the gain here, for example. Yeah, and let's test this here. Something like that, or maybe we make it in the opposite way, something like that here. Yeah, to have a little bit more contrast here. And now we bring this again to a background. So let's take a different color here so that it looks a little bit more bright. And then we take a merge, bring this here and this here together, and let's take a look. Okay, the plates are not the right size. Why? Because this here is still 4K. So let's take a reformat here and place it here. And then we go back here and now we see the result. And if you look at that here, you see it looks correct. Yeah, so if you now begin to play here in these color corrections, you see you don't get artifacts here in these half transparent areas. Everything is fine. But if you now test the same thing without this workflow here, so what we do is I take here another color correct and I hook up here directly after the reformat. So we don't use that here now. And then we want to have the same color correct here. So what we can do is make a right mouse button click here on this color correct, go to edit. Then we can clone this node by copy as a clone and then paste it. You will see that you now get a color correct node which absolutely does the same thing like the other one because it's the same node. So this node here drives this node here. And then we merge the whole thing onto the same background. Okay, maybe it's better to bring it over, but yeah. let's try this. So this is output number 1, this is output number 2. And if we now compare these two, you will see that you get some darker areas here. And now we can start playing with the values here a little bit more. Maybe we also want to have a little bit more saturation here. And yeah, let's change the gamma again. And now compare these two results again, 1 and 2. You will see that here in these areas suddenly you get small artifacts. It really depends sometimes on the colors which you have. Also, really often these artifacts come in the half transparent areas, like in this anti-aliasing. And this is an artifact which you normally get if you don't think about premultiplication. So rule is always, if you make a color correction and you have a pre-multiplied stream, which we have here, unpremulted first, make then your color corrections and bring it back to premult before you go into a merge node. So that's it for this lesson. I hope this helps you to understand a little bit more what's going on here. If you have questions, please write into the comments or write me an email. If you like these lessons here about NUKE, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. And in the next lesson, we talk about color management. And then we have all the fundamentals done and we can start comping cool stuff. See you later. Your Helge Maus.